Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge. Can anything stop Nvidia? And can anything stop MP Materials? We told you about it last week. You want to know more about it today? Stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge. Bang!
There we go. Ready to roll.
We have two bangs at the top, so I'm only going to bang that thing once.
That's fair.
By the way, folks, the guy on that side of the screen is Pete Najarian. I'm Jon Najarian. Welcome to the Rebel's Edge. We break down macro minute, fantastic futures, some of the big stories like MP that we described last week, and some sports. All that starts right now. All right, Pete. Let's kick it off with that macro, and let's say President Trump announced, well, he isn't done tariffing people, not by a long shot. He's talking about, 50 or 100% tariff on Russia if no peace deal with Ukraine is reached within some specified time frame. Additionally, the president reiterated his criticism of Jerome Powell, and he ain't the only one, because Powell, for some inexplicable reason, Pete, decided that what the Fed really needs is a $2.5 billion building. So that makes it pretty easy to go after him, wouldn't you say?
I would say. Jon, we kicked off earnings season, the financials. They beat all the estimates. The only issue that I see at all is the fact that, when you look at JP Morgan, for instance, and you say year over year, it's actually down a little bit. I don't think I'd call that concerning, especially when you look at how much of a lift we've had out of JP Morgan, as well as many of the different financials that we're going to be hearing from. But in the last month or so, they've been absolutely ripping to the upside. They had to destroy it to get even higher, and they didn't, in my opinion. They beat, but they didn't destroy it. So I think that's why we are seeing the markets moving the way they are. We obviously know the Nvidia news is bringing up NASDAQ specifically. And then on the other hand, you're looking at a little bit of a pull from some of the financials. Not huge, but a little bit of a pull on the Dow.
All right. Well, for fantastic futures, Pete, I'm going to say gold. Even though it's only down 1/3 today, I'm going to say it's down $100 from the recent high. When you look at it, folks, the recent high, which was the 6th of May, I believe, it was, over 34.30. And today it's 33.48. So it's experiencing a little pullback. Is it enough to drive you out of the market? Probably not, but it's noteworthy, and that's why I'm talking about it.
Sure. I like that one, Jon. You talked about Bitcoin yesterday. I'm just going to do a little follow-up that it's pulling back pretty rapidly as well. We had that big jump yesterday, nearly 123,000, and now we're looking at 116,000, Jon, the last I looked. So it's interesting to see. Obviously, there's some folks out there that maybe wanted to take a little bit of profits. That's a possibility. There's a lot of different possibilities out there, but this isn't one that I think you want to sleep on. I think that there still is some upside to this. And then I look over at the volatility index, because that's what I always do. And I'm looking over there. Look at the tight range that it's in, Jon. Call it 16 to 1850 over since late June. So it's interesting to see how this thing's been moving around the volatility index. But I wouldn't say that right now it's reflecting any kind of major concerns in the market, especially where we're sitting right now.
Well, we have something that should be of major concern to all of you, which is the 10X Rebel Boot Camp. The reason it should be a concern is there are only room for 120 of you to join us in Aventura, Florida. If you don't know where that is, it's just north of Miami, around 163rd or so, and Collins, just off of that, you get into Aventura. And at the Grant Cardone headquarters, we have a fabulous classroom that Grant uses. We are going to perhaps even have Grant drop in for Friday and Saturday, September 19th and 20th, Rebel Boot Camp. The 19th is all live trading. The 20th, we're going to be talking about strategies, giving you guys stories about how we take our tax structure and turn it upside down. We can show you some of those strategies. We can also, of course, let you know about our new trading platform that we've got, Rebel Trade. Well, you want to know about all that and more, come to Rebel Boot Camp. That's the 10X Rebel Boot Camp. You can scan that QR code right there on the screen. It's at the 10X headquarters, September 19th and 20th. It's going to be fabulous. And again, this is not a bait and switch, folks. We can't put more than 120 people in the room and have any comfort. So if you come late, you will not attend. You might be able to watch it remotely, but it won't be remotely as good as live in the classroom. So check it out. 10X Rebel Boot Camp, September 19th and 20th. Just scan that QR code. All right, Pete.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at what you and I were talking about last week with MP Materials. We'll take a quick look, and then we'll talk about the new news that broke today. $1,000 position made $73,000. Now, this is a rare earth miner. The DOD signed a deal for a public-private partnership in the
Guys do that in stocks all the time, right, John? Nobody.
Yeah, public-private partnership. These rare earths, especially if the government's buying all those rare earths from you. Unusual activity that we had in this one, Pete, went from 30 cents to $22 for the July 25 calls. 30 cents. Position made $73,000.
Seems like a pretty good trade.
Do we always want to have to be worried about somebody in a foreign country that has all the control, China or anybody else? I mean, it makes a lot of sense
that
we start to explore this in a
China?
much bigger way. And it's something.
Did you say China or China?
There it was.
Well, folks, we know that you know that it goes into missiles, it goes into guidance systems, these rare earths do. And of course, they go into everything that a lot of us use every day. Like, for instance, your Apple iPhone or your Android phone. Those rare earths are in there for your battery, for the speakers, for the haptic, or in other words, how the phone sort of vibrates and things like that. So guess what? Apple decides we can't do without it, Pete. So they step up and they say, you know what? We're going to give you $500 million deal for rare earths. And guess what the stock did today then, Pete? It went up even further. It traded through $58 to the upside, which means that now it's up over 111x. Not return, not 100%, 111x. That's an amazing return on options. And that's why we say it's not an option to just trade stock.
The only thing you were wrong on, John, is it's got a new 52-week high, which is 62.87. So, yeah, this thing is absolutely ripping to the upside. You talked about it, 21% to the upside, strong. You've got those shorts with about 20% of the short interest, John. So those guys, do you think they're feeling it? Do you think they're getting a little bit of a squeeze? I would say they are. That number is not going to stay at 20% because these guys are going to have to start reaching up and buying back. But, you know, this is a really interesting move. Apple is trying their very best, John, to be involved in this whole thing with the U.S. He's had his meetings with Trump. We all know about all those. And not only that, but what I'm really excited about is I think that Tim Cook is finally really embracing Texas, John, because this is another company that's right outside of Fort Worth. So they've already got some of the things that they've moved to Texas. By the way, a no tax state. If I sat on that board, I've said this a million times, I sat on the Apple board, I would look at every other board member and say, why do we give away, 12, 13% to the state of California? Why don't we get the hell out of here and go to Texas? Or figure out something a lot better than what they've done. So that's one of those things, John, where I think they're doing the right thing right now by getting themselves bigger and bigger into Texas.
Yeah, and the United States as a whole. I mean, in other words, all these batteries and the magnets and everything that you hear about for this trade that they're doing, Pete, is going to be happening here in the United States. And Trump's going to make sure that if they think they're going to go to India, Pete, he's going to tariff the heck out of those iPhones. And Tim Cook might have to do the right thing and build as much of it as possible here. So we'll see, Pete. Let's talk about Nvidia, though, because Nvidia and AMD get great news. Jensen Huang is doing the Lord's work, Pete, for Nvidia. If you're somebody in Nvidia, you love this guy. He's driven it to a $4 trillion valuation. What about the law of big numbers? Again, he's driven it to that. And he is continuing to put his foot on the gas, Pete. And when you look at the unusual volume we had, look at these folks back to back in June. June 23rd, they were buying the July 165 calls. Those calls expire on Friday this week. What about the 24th? Somebody is buying, not Jensen Huang, but somebody is buying almost 60,000 of the 146 calls. Both of these are in the money because the stock was trading through 171, as you see on the screen there. So that means in the case of the July 165s, Pete, took them from 25 cents to at least $7. And in the case of the 146s, he took them up much higher than that. I mean, this is a windfall for anybody who was in it. And knock on wood, an awful lot of our subscribers were in this.
Yeah, hitting all-time highs. It seems like day after day all of a sudden, John. But the tailor-made chips that are going to China as well, I think that Jensen Huang sat down not only with the president, but he sat down with others. They were able to get things going and moving into the right direction for what they wanted to do, how they wanted to get back and get some of those sales. Well, this H2O AI, John, those chips, those are big dogs, and that's going to really be a huge boost for Nvidia. It wasn't like Nvidia needed anything else, but this was something that they were shooting for sure, and this is why they're absolutely going even higher than just the other day on some of the good news that's been put out there. But this is great news for both of them, Nvidia and AMD, for sure.
Right. Well, let's switch over to Newegg, Pete. Negg. Now, we might not talk about this one much because it's not that they make all this stuff, Pete, but they sell desktops, laptops, gaming laptops, peripherals. So when Pete and I were talking about it before the show, folks, we said, well, Logitech makes stuff like I just described, but these guys are just a seller of it, a reseller, if you will. And they've said that, hey, our projected net sales are going to be between 678 million and 713 million. That might be good, might even be great, but they're also going to sell up to $65 million worth of common stock. So that tells you that maybe, Pete, maybe they're going to dilute their stock a little bit more, and that's why it's trading down so hard.
Yeah, and somewhere I was reading one of the articles, John, over on Yahoo Finance about the fact that their revenue has been dropping pretty dramatically year over year, and that can be a pretty big problem for these guys as well. So the first half of 2025, not doing so great, and unless they see some sort of greatness coming in the second half of 2025, this is a company that, I don't know, you don't want to call them prehistoric, but they don't seem to have people wanting to buy as much as they did before. And that's always a problem. So this is one of those where I've got palms out. I have no interest in trying to buy the bottom in this one because I don't think they're at the bottom yet.
All right. Well, let's hit one more, Pete. Newmont. Obviously, since I talked about gold at the top of the show, that's one of the big things for this company. But their CFO, Chief Financial Officer, decided abruptly to resign. Now, her name's Karen Ovelman. She's only 62, but all of a sudden she just says, more or less, Pete, out of nowhere, hey, I'm out of here. That scares people. Now, they said, Pete, that this does not involve any disagreement with the company or a matter relating to company operations or financial statements or accounting. But anytime you see a CFO leave like this, it sounds like they had a pretty big disagreement with somebody over something. And since they're a financial officer, it usually is some of those things that they're denying that she didn't leave for.
Right. And the fact that it's immediate, I mean, that word alone says a lot. So there's something there. We don't know what it is, but because of that, yeah, this is one of those where they say they're going to get a replacement as quick as they possibly can. They've already got the interim gentleman in that position now, but year to date, John, stock's up 52%. So this might be one of those times where somebody might decide, you know what, maybe we take off a little bit at this point in time until we figure out what's going on with the CFO, or if there is anything that wasn't really talked about for as far as why the CFO suddenly decided this is the time to leave. But John, this is a great company because of the fact that they're sitting in the catbird seat. They have gold, of course, is the main thing, but they also have copper. And that combination doesn't seem to be so bad right now, given where copper's trading, where gold's been trading, and the free cash flow of about $7 billion. That sounds pretty good to me on a company that's got a 13 PE. So for those reasons, John, this is one of those where you might want to lighten up a little bit, but there still could be some pretty nice stuff in the future. But I think lightening up would probably be a pretty disciplined move right now.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Pete. And generally speaking, the miners do get ahead of the price of the yellow metal when they start seeing, the sort of runs that we've seen out of gold this year. All right, Pete, what do you got as far as sports? I know you've got something interesting in here.
Well, the one that I think is the most interesting right now off the top of my head is because of what we saw yesterday, John, and everybody started talking about this. This is why this podcast is different than so many others, right? You and I, two former professional linebackers in the NFL, and then going into the finance world. So we always have these sports, and it doesn't always have to be football, but football is pretty damn popular. So I'll say this. Everybody yesterday was talking about Odell Beckham. Everybody, anywhere you looked, whether it's on the sports side, ESPN, or on the financial side, John, a lot of people talking about, well, this guy did a really nice job because he got paid in Bitcoin, which pretty interesting. A lot of players have done that, but he's not the king. And for some reason, he got the crown yesterday. Maybe it's name, whatever. But John, how about Russell Okung? Now, this guy was the 6th pick in the entire draft, went to the Seattle Seahawks, played at multiple different places after that. But when Russell signed his contract, he had 50% of the $13 million contract was in Bitcoin. And the reason that's important is this was also 2010. Bitcoin, do you know where Bitcoin was trading back in 2010? It's outrageous. If this guy hung on to that, John, we're talking billions, not millions. And it's an unbelievable thing that he did this, but you got to love it. And I just thought that guy needed a little love because there were multiple players. Aaron Rodgers is another guy who did some of his payment in Bitcoin and so forth. I mean, there's a myriad of different athletes and not just NFL guys, but I thought Russell Okung, now this is guys from Nigeria originally, played at Oklahoma State, and then he was up there in Seattle, bounced around all over the league. But those are big numbers, John, pretty exciting numbers. And I wanted to give him a shout out because I thought that was so damn impressive.
Yeah, well, Pete, I knew that Odell Beckham Jr. got paid in that too, got paid in Bitcoin, and he wasn't at the top of his game at that point, so he got paid well. But in 21, Pete, he signed his contract and he was getting $750,000 from the Rams. Now, it fell after that. In fact, Bitcoin was 64,000 at that time. It went all the way below 17,000 during the crypto winter in 22. Now, if he held, and he'd have to have some guts to hold, but if he held, he did really, really well. Didn't make the same money as Russell, but he definitely grew it back to about $1.5 million instead of the 750 that he was paid. And keep in mind, the dollar keeps shrinking in its value, but Bitcoin has kept going up, Pete.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was pretty exciting for a lot of people reading about Beckham, and it is exciting because basically it doubled, right? I mean, the 750 is almost 1.5 million, so not so bad. All props to all those guys for having the guts to do some of that, or maybe even a little bit crazy, but nonetheless, it worked out pretty damn well for all these guys. All right, do we got a little video coming up here, John, on Teddy Bridgewater?
We do. Let's take a look at what and I'm right there with Pete when Pete sent me this, folks, and he said, hey, have you seen what they're doing to Teddy Bridgewater, former quarterback for the Vikings and a bunch of other teams? And then the guy basically says, hey, I want to be a football coach. And he doesn't go to some football factory like IMG or some of these others, Matter Day or some of these. Instead, he goes down to some poor school in Florida and basically takes them from 4-8, I think, to a state championship. So we wanted you guys to see this video.
Bridgewater just got suspended for the dumbest reason ever. So everyone remembers Teddy, right? NFL quarterback, played for like 55 different teams.
He's
a
the
few
guy
years
who
ago,
almost
Teddy
had his
retired and
legs
decided he's going to become a high school football coach for Miami Northwestern. The year before Teddy becomes coach, they go 4-6. The next year, when
4-6.
Teddy is the coach, they win a state championship. But it was just announced
bad.
about an hour ago that
It's in
Teddy
Florida,
has been
too. This is real
suspended
football.
for giving impermissible benefits to players. Now, when you think of
Impermissible benefits. Listen to
you're
what
probably
these
like,
are,
Teddy's
folks.
giving them a bunch of gifts and prizes and trying to recruit a little bit more, right? Not even close. We've come to find out that Teddy has spent
Not even
over
close.
200 grand on his team and his players just to make them better. He spent 14 grand on the entire team last year to bring them to a camp. $9,500 on pride sets, which I'm assuming are just like team gear. $300 a week to keep the field painted. $1,300 a week to have recovery trucks come service the players before
Recovery
games.
trucks,
$2,200 to feed the team
He's
before every
being
game.
a
He spends
great
$700
person,
a week on
and they
Ubers
penalize
all
him
of his
for
players.
being a
The whole
great
thesis
person.
behind him getting suspended was
Yeah.
to keep the amateurism
What
of
if,
high
Pete,
school
what
sports.
if
But
the
personally, I
school
think it's complete
had
bullshit. He's not
provided
bringing players
that
to
for the
clubs or giving
players?
them $200
Right.
But they
for
couldn't
every
afford
touchdown.
to.
He was giving them
And they wouldn't do
necessities
it
that the
probably
team
just
needs
for
to
40 or
compete
50
and be a
players,
team.
however many
Honestly, it's
people
just
they have.
complete
But
bullshit
instead,
that
this
Teddy is
guy,
getting
Teddy,
punished for
is
helping
being a
college
stand-up guy,
kids
and he's
because he
helping
I
all
already know
these
this is gonna spark
players
so many debates
become
about
something
NIL
more
and
than they might have been otherwise.
And he was always considered a stand-up guy. His whole career, that was great, by the way. His whole career, he always was a stand-up guy. He was that guy. Everybody loved Teddy Bridgewater. He had this unbelievable injury when he was playing with the Vikings, where he damn near had to take off his leg from the knee down because of what happened to his leg on the field. So this guy has seen the best and the worst parts of the NFL. But here's some of the stuff, John, that he did. Pre-game meals. Oh, okay. So that's really awful that he's providing these guys who probably don't have much money, and he's providing them with a pregame meal. That sounds terrible. How about the Uber rides? But what were they for? For practice, because not everybody is right next door. And so, they got to reach out. So he provided Ubers. He had the field maintenance that he talked about that cost $300 to, mow the grass once a week, all those types of things. This guy is as quality a guy as they get. He should be a guy that people are just like talking about what a great person he was. He didn't go out there and come to guys and say, hey, here's $500 if you come over from your school to my school. That's not what he was doing. And, so I think somebody really screwed up on this thing, and the suspension is idiotic, but he is so adamant about the fact that, well, whenever that's done, I'm their coach. I will be their coach. And I'm going to probably, he didn't say this, but it felt like he said, and I'm going to have to do it the way I think it needs to be done. And if these guys need to have a little bit of help along the way, I think it's like Santa Claus. The guy is phenomenal. We should be holding him up as the guy that everybody should model themselves after, right?
Yep, absolutely we should, Pete. A guy giving back like this, a guy that made it to the very top, because that's one of the most elite clubs, and that's why Pete should be and is so proud of his time in the NFL. And I had, 4 games. But for a guy to be at the top of that, not just in training camp like me, but, all the way to the top, and a starting quarterback for an NFL team. There's only 32 of those guys in the whole world, and he's one of them. That's pretty amazing. So we've got another one for you tomorrow, folks. I won't tell you who it is, but another guy that really gave back and really makes athletes look like they're more than just, showing up in a club and, making it rain and drinking like fools and driving 120 miles an hour down the Vegas Strip. There's lots of guys like that. There are fewer guys that give back like Teddy, but they're, it's fair to say a lot of these guys really do pay attention to how lucky they were to get where they got. So we're going to tell a story of one of the most famous athletes on earth tomorrow on the Rebel's Edge. And I forget, Pete, what time is that tomorrow?
1 p.m. Eastern time.
See you then, folks.